Right. So we have some positional positions. There's some positional diagrams to study. So this is Michael Adams and Gata Kamsky. So Kamsky has white, Adams has black. So we're looking for Adams here for black. Now, what does white want, and how do we stop it? That's a lot of positional chess. It's like Agard's principles. Just Jacob Agard, the Scottish GM and trainer, I think of the Dutch team, and he says, um, so always ask, what is my opponent trying to do? Where are the weaknesses? And what's my worst piece? Of course, it's corresponding. You can also ask, what's my opponent's worst piece, right? Of course, you should know what you're trying to do, right? But you have to ask what your opponent's trying to do. We're just solid here. You know, we have this could either come out of a French or Caro-Kann advanced variation. That bishop's been traded off, which is nice. Maybe it was a Caro-Kann got traded earlier. So we have to worry about our light squared bishop. It's nice that we only have our dark squared bishop, which is not hindered by any pawns. So what is white trying to do? Let me check actually what the last move was. This was from a real game. Let me see. This is the position showing up. Hold on. Let me pause share for a second, and I'm going to pull up the game. Let's see. I'll just view it, and I'll show you how they just got to this position. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, it was out of a car. I actually like this line. So it was out of a Caro-Kann, just to show you the context. So advance, right? Yeah, bishop f5 did occur. I haven't seen the game yet, but that's beyond the point here. But it's interesting just to see the context. That actually is important. So bishop to d7. I like this line myself. So bishop c d. Obviously, if you go here, you're going to run into some pawn advances. You could do it, but in this position, either d7, even c8. I like bishop d7, and it becomes a French. Now the question is this a French transposition where white had hoped that they hadn't played g4 / some other pawn advances. So you try to transpose favorably, right? So you say, okay, fine, you want to take this. You wasted all this time with your knight. I'm happy if you get rid of my quote bad bishop. And now knight takes d7 is 38% each and 23% draws. So knight goes back to d3, which actually scores better for black, 33 versus 17%. c5 strikes, takes, bishop b5. See, there it is, right? Computer's already favoring black a tad. You see that? Black is, in other words, black has zero problems, very comfortable at the opening. We have a few games like this. We have Adams wins, some other 2400 wins. All right, so bishop b5, f4. So that's how it comes about. So we had g4 kicking the bishop, and then we have f4, and that's where his intentions are pretty clear. I mean, he could just stay there, but now that he's played f4, you see the flow of the game. Now, if you just look at it, you have to figure out the context and everything. We have the context now. So what does white want? What do you guys think? Seeing f4. And this position, we have 2 wins. Yeah, you'll see here we have, these are the players, just to show you real quick. This Piotr Murcia, and Gata Kamsky. Sorry, Adams playing with black. Okay, so let's go back to the position. Now, after we trade, then we have, now we've had f4 occur. We have the knight behind it, which is useful for white. And then we have knight out. And right after queen e2, this is the moment that this is our puzzle. So we have the context. Now it's black to play and not win, but black to play and stop the idea. Now, queen e2 is just a natural looking developing move, but it actually has a very clear purpose in order to try to carry out white's idea. Now, I don't know if it's premature or not for white to do this now, but looking at it, you can figure out what white wants. What do you guys think that is? Pause it for a second while you think.
It looks like a kingside attack involving pawn thrust and potentially infiltration by the bishops and
exactly, bishop pair, exactly. And what else?
Knight, since it can hop, and the queen I think is kind of staying back with the idea that maybe she could come in once the others.
She's backing it up, right? She might come later, exactly. And what else? You said one more thing.
That was it.
Oh, that was it. Okay. So yeah, what's the pawn thrust exactly? That looks good. I like your analysis of it. Pretty much hit all the points. Now, what's the exact pawn thrust that you think White wants based on his earlier play?
Maybe G5, since it will be protected by the knight, and they could still, well, actually,
Yeah,
think
you're starting to see it, right? You're starting to see it's like, where do you go with it, right? You're thinking, okay, imagine you have White. You have White here. You have so you're playing for Gata Kamsky. And by the way, they're both former champions. Pretty sure Kamsky was, yeah, he was US champion. I met him once actually, very briefly, and then Adams was British champion. And interestingly, Kamsky's 23.45, Adams is 25.05, 89. So I guess I think Kamsky's peak was like approaching late 90s. So probably he was working his way up. Then obviously he broke. I'm not sure if he was 20, if he was a GM yet, unless I think unless he had fallen down. I think he was probably on his road to GM, maybe mid 90s. He was probably GM by then. I have to double check which year he was champion. I'll pull it up. But anyway, as you see for Kamsky, G5 is like, what do I do with it, right? Unless you want to sack your pawn, I'm not sure if there's anything there. So you start saying, you're like, oh wait, okay, so what else do you think he might do? Hold up right now.
maybe F5, because
Hmm.
it would still be covered by the light square bishop and the G pawn, and then if black decides to take back with the E pawn, then the G pawn would just take its place.
Right, and you saw this. He was telegraphing this, signaling with F4 that he wants to go F5. I mean, other than the fact that he gets his knight behind, but keep in mind that White's position's a little loose. It's like he's committed his king. You could actually imagine Black is much more fluid in terms of the king placement. You can imagine him being in the center sometimes. Of course, that's why he wants to blast it open, hoping it favors him. It's like, hey, both our kings in the center. I want it to favor me, and the thing is, Black can go queenside, maybe kingside. Of course, he's walking into a pawn storm, and that's exactly why we're gonna treat this effectively and make it so that we can castle kingside. But you can imagine that you could go queenside sometimes. Of course, White would attempt some sort of pawn storm, maybe back up or even sack with the b pawn, probably c3, b4. Even that might not be so bad. Sometimes they go b5 and you just blockade with knight a5, and you're like, okay, I move my king, castle, move it to b8, or even out of the even more out of the center to a8, usually b8. It's fine. And then you got knight c4 coming. You can blockade firmly on those dark squares. So yeah, they have to be careful about that. But right now we're in the center, but you'll see he even goes to the king side if he can treat this properly. So as you said, Leia, f5. Oh, and by the way, I just pulled it up really quickly. Got that, like we were talking about with Nicole last week about the Google search. So I got that AI overview, although it's kind of cited as links. So he actually won quite a few times. Wait, this was 89. So I guess, that's 2 more years. So I guess by then he was a GM. It was a quick, climb. 91, 10, 11, 13. So yeah, his peak was actually moving into the thousands, like into the aughts and beyond, really, until Magnus was champion. He was concurrently, US champion while Magnus was world champion. But I think it was more, yeah, early 2000s was his peak, maybe. He defected to the US in 89 around the time of, yeah, obviously a lot of GMs. So you're kind of like a brain drain. And then I imagine New York City, a lot of them came to New York City, which became like the new Mecca of the Moscow, I guess. And now it's St. Louis with all the resources that this billionaire Sinkfield poured into it, right? So 1990, there you go. So this was a year beforehand. And as I said, he was 23-45. So he gained like over 150 points within a year. So just had a big climb that year. So anyway, as you said, Leah, Kamsky wants f5, and let's go back to Black here. So we have Adams stopping f5 or making f5, make it impotent and make that move ineffective. So now that we understand that, I'll pause it and let's think about what do we actually do to restrict our opponent. But first things first, you have to know what they want. And his signal with f4. But oh, and as I think I mentioned it, I mentioned queen e2 that it supports e5. I'm not sure I mentioned that e5. So that way we're attempting to overprotect it or protect it enough. So you're currently overprotected, but so that way when you push f5, we have two attackers, they have two defenders. We can't win it. Therefore, he's able to push f5 without even sacrificing anything. So we're not going to let him do that. Let's pause real quick. Okay. So we're looking at queen e2 supporting e5. h5. That's the answer, h5. So white's trying to play f5, right? White's trying to grab that e5 square as much as possible. And Matt, you mentioned knight d4, I think when we paused it. So it does get rid of the knight, but think about it. The other thing is that when you go here, you're also giving up your own pressure here. So it kind of neutralizes now if they take, I don't know, I mean, take, c3, kick you back. So they could probably still get it in. The only weird thing about this for white, like I said, both kings are in the center. It's like you want to open the position, but your king's in the middle too. Again, white's trying to get the better of it. Say, hey, we're both going to have centralized kings with an open position. But white's like, look, I'm the one that's pushing. Of course, it feels premature, though. I mean, he just hasn't finished his development. It does certainly feel premature. Unless he does something kind of funky like castle's queenside with an a-pawn pushed. It's possible. It's kind of like castle kingside, push your h-pawn. It is possible. Anyway, yeah, so the thing about h5 is it's a really deep move. It indirectly stops f5. Now, again, f5 is right now he wants to play it. The moment he goes queen e2, he wants to play it. So you want to kind of take out the legs, take out the support of that f5 push. So he still could play f5. And you can't win his e-pawn. So you remember, well, pretty much the f-pawn supports the e-pawn, and the g-pawn would have to support the f-pawn. And after moving, you have enough piece support to push. We got to be real careful with white, of course, looseness. But now the main idea is you don't let him play f5 and steamroll you at any rate, even if it might not be the greatest. We just don't want to worry about it, right? When you play h5, well, the trick is tactically, they don't have h3. That's just bad. Why is it so bad? After takes, why would that be bad for black? I'm sorry, bad for white, good for black.
You leave the rook hanging.
Yeah, it's in other words, the H pawn is what? Through the X-ray of this, the H pawn will be what? When you after you take the X-ray is revealed. It's kind of like you have a discovery. You technically have a discovery of the rook, discovered attack on the H pawn, and the H pawn is what? It's that other word, a tactical word. Starts with a P.
Pinned.
It will be pinned. Right. So first, it's interesting. I was speaking with someone about this recently about pins and X-rays and all that. Effectively, it would say they say skewers and pins. Effectively, I'd say that's we both agreed that this was Zachary Kinney. We were having a chat about. He's like, look, I mean, yeah, it's basically all under the category of X-rays. You might have an X-ray just looking through stuff. We don't actually do a tactic, but we have an X-ray from rook to rook via the pawns. So now the X-ray begins to actually do something. It reveals itself. It becomes less and less of an X-ray, let's say, because now we only have one thing in between. If you take again, you got nothing in between, and you take the rook. So it becomes more and more of a direct attack, and then that becomes you directly see a pin. If, for example, yeah, h3 takes, and then it's just pin, and you're probably going to win another pawn. But yeah, and again, you take out the base of that push. And you're hitting the knight, by the way. So now time. You can always play g6 and reinforce that. So the point is you're not going to let them do that. If you want to stop them, you can. So they don't have h3, right? Therefore, he goes g5. And as you said, Leia, we don't care if they go g. Well, white doesn't really want that, so we don't care. See, now look at this. Look at the bar. Look at the eval from here. So queen e2, it's starting to go up. And then g5, it goes up even more. I guess what did it think was the best move? It just wants to take it, which is not that great either. And also looking at knight b4, just chop off that bishop, because that's white's good bishop in any French structure or advanced Carcassonne, right? So anyway, h5, take out the kind of root or the legs of f5 push, knock him out knock out his feet or whatever. Okay, so g5, and then let's finish this thing. Let's finish this block, effectively blockade, locking it up. And I already kind of foreshadowed what black's going to do. If you guys recall what I'm talking about with the king. So what do we do first? How do we finish reinforcing this and basically pretty much doing in this idea of f5? What do we do? What are some candidate moves? Got to control that five, right? I mean, he could play. He still probably has enough control to stop white for now. But we just want to take away, again, this is all about taking away their prospects, whether or not they're perfect at the moment, whether or not they're totally ready. Just don't let them do it, right? So what do you guys see how we control f5 a little more?
Maybe pawn to g6.
Perfect. That's one, John.
Stops the pawn from moving forward and stops the bishop from coming in.
Yeah, actually, I guess three things. As you said, the bishop restricts it further. It physically blockades the G pawn. And that wasn't even our concern earlier. It was about the F pawn. But hey, why not, right? I mean, he might get that in, you know, like
And
knights.
the knight. Yeah.
It's kind of annoying, right?
Yeah.
You do what with the knight?
I said, and the knight stops the knight from going to g5.
Yeah, if you like push and double the pawns and come in or something like that, some tricks there. And funny enough, you see the evaluation actually going back to even, but who cares? You know, it's this. The point is, as a human, he did this and he ended up winning. But our human understanding tells us, look, we're going to nip this in the bud. You probably end up getting that in, and maybe white has c3. I don't know. Does he do that? Yeah, he does. But you know, that's why I like this move, because it realizing the stockfish realizes, hey, this is not there yet, maybe. Although that is annoying, right? So just stop it, reinforce f5. And that's the thing. That's what I was getting at. I remember I mentioned castles. Trades, but does he do it now? Yeah, he does it at that move. So he does it on move 19. Sorry, 18 for black, 19 for white. So we're both, funny enough, we were both facing off in the center, kind of, again, x-raying each other, like long distance, let's say, with the kings. But that's important because it's about who opens up, right? Opens up, who it affects more favorably. Now we have the kings staring each other down again. And I think we can sense actually that it probably favors black now in terms of, you know, kings facing off and opening up lines, get out of the way maybe. But here's the thing. A lot of times when they overextend, you guys have probably seen this, where you get at them from other, like this diagonal would be the G1 A7 diagonal. If the queen moves, when you get the B pawn or something, then you'd work laterally, right? Might have some stuff like this is very common. There's a cool Capablanca game. He actually comes back, funny enough, but this is they call a heavy artillery game. If you look it up versus Nimzovich, Caracan, same thing, actually very similar. Same thing happens with this structure exactly, actually. And then he tries to come into c4. So you kind of work lateral, and he literally does. He gets the heavy artillery is on the 4th rank. Beautiful game. I don't know if you guys have seen it. He gets his rooks coming in. Everything's coming in here on the 4th rank. So, and then f4 is weak, and he comes in. Exact same structure, actually. I'm not sure exactly here, but over here, everything is the same in that game. So you know your patterns, right? You see that one, you see this one, and you would do the same thing yourself, very likely. You play h5 with your rook there, remember, because the nice thing is you can still castle this way. So we have our rooks supporting. So if he were to take, you know, we can, and the computer says maybe he should, whatever. You always have the option of taking. But when he takes, yeah, you could take, you could reinforce with g6, but you'll have that f5 square to use, right? That's the key. That's what I want you to take away from it. We know that they're supporting f5. We take away the support. And now they're definitely, well, I mean, they could, it's funny enough, again, in the Capablanca game, what he does, I should probably pull it up really quickly, actually, since I'm mentioning it. What he does is he plays rook f8. I think it is one of the rooks to e8. Maybe it's back here, actually. Rook c e8 or something. And so he makes it even harder for some attempt at pushing. And, you know, you don't want to take this way because the h pawn falls or something. And if the e pawn takes, he might have some prospect of playing e6 after the capture. So Capablanca just removes that prospect pretty much entirely from Nimzovich. The only thing we've entirely removed is g5 right now. But we make it very unappealing to play f5. And there you go. Because of that, you've taken away his ability to open up lines against your king. And now we can sense that actually, again, computer gives us minus 0.1. I like it for black. Again, it didn't even mention g6. Maybe it was move 2 or 3 that it meant that it was looking at. But as a human, I'm very happy because we shut them down. And now our king is pretty, if we're looking at our position in terms of value of king safety, we put some weight on, we put a lot of weight on that. So in that respect, I think we're favoring black a lot. White has some grip on dark squares. White has dark squares. Black has light squares, right? But I don't know. I'm not sure where the play comes from for white. He plays b4, weakens his position like c3, c4 square. So black has a lot of prospects. But anyway, that's the main idea. And let me show you really quickly. So it's called, if you look up heavy artillery, I'm just typing Nimzo Kappa. Nimzo Kappa, it should show up. Hopefully the VPN will not stop me from clicking on it. I think they finally allow it. Yeah, they allow it now. Used to not allow that at all. Okay. They just want cookies. Okay. All right. Where is it? Okay, anyway. I'll just show you quickly that position that I'm referring to. So Capablanca has black, also Caro-Kann. And you see this time they trade. Remember the other time you wrapped around, traded bishop for knight. This time it's bishop for bishop. Has the better dark squared bishop. And you'll see the structure. Gives up 2 bishops. Now we have 2 against 1. We had 2 against 1. Now we have 1 against the knights, which is more manageable. So very similar, right? F4 is played. Knight F5. He gets in G4. See, the structure is becoming the same. There it is. See, I can give you this puzzle also. I could give you the same thing. Only difference is if white really wants to, they could play H3, take back. But then previously, the X-ray turns into a pin where we literally win the rook in the corner. Now we'd basically win the file. And again, black can still castle queenside. Who knows? Maybe king up. I'd probably go queenside, play on the H file. So he bypasses. Boom. Same exact thing. I don't think he played H4 though. No, I don't think he played H4. So my bad. He did. It's this and not a H2 pawn. So he has a little bit of protection maybe. But yeah, very, very similar, right? And the other one, the pawn's on H4, isn't it? No, maybe it wasn't. No, it's not actually. Okay, so it was right. They're both on H2. So it's almost the same thing, isn't it? Actually, the only difference, I think like A6 was played. That's funny, right? It's very similar. And then, you come over here. And like I said, he tries to go knight c4. And he's like, never mind. He comes back. And then there you see what I was talking about. Just as I mentioned it, you can have a concrete idea. 4th rank. Weaknesses really matter here. Black is tighter, much tighter. White's loose. And he pays the price. Anyway, that's worth looking at. That's a great game. Just look up heavy artillery and you'll see it. Capablanca heavy artillery or Nimzovich. All right, so back to this one. That's pretty much it on this one. You can go to another one. You guys have any questions about it?
Nope.
There you go. See, I haven't seen the whole game before. I just looked at the puzzle. I just happened to pull up the game because we're on Lee chess, so it shows you the position. That's why I didn't show at the beginning because you'll see H5 here. I'll give it away. Can do that. But okay. And again, for just to see, first we have the context. Now we have the aftermath. But it's really funny, actually. Does he come back to C? No, he does come into C4. But they both flirt with that idea. He actually does come in. But now look at the looseness. What I was alluding to, right? So this is very important. B3, B4. He goes back. It's so similar, right? Very similar to the other game. We see same structure, pattern recognition, right? And yeah, a lot of similarities. Hold on, let me pause it for a second. So now on to one more puzzle. This one, I'm not sure if this is I don't think this is from a real game. It's just an example. Okay. So it's actually very similar to Fischer-Spassky round 5. I don't think it's the exact position, but very similar to Fischer-Spassky round 5, if not the game. But it doesn't show up in the database here. So anyway, here we are. We have to know what white wants. Look at that pawn structure. So we evaluate that again. But once we know the main idea, we can shut them down. And again, just like the last game, we basically take away all their play. But you just have to know it's not about the tactic. It's kind of the prelude to that. It's about their general idea to press with the pawns or attack you, because the pawns are the soul of chess. And especially in kind of locked up positions, pawns are going to determine the piece play. You might get like a knight working around the pawns. You're not going to have full piece coordination unless you blast it. Someone's got to blast. And as I said in the last game, there's that tension between who's king it benefits. So you might blast it open. It doesn't make a difference who blasted open. If it favors your pieces and your pieces are ready to go. But if you do it prematurely, it may as well be as though your opponent blasted it. Because if they want it, like, oh, thanks for blasting it open for me. Now my pieces are ready to harvest some weak squares and invade and chew up your position. So anyway, here we are. So what does white want? Pause that while you guys think about it. Think about pawn structure. If you had white, what would you do?
So
So Matt was saying, when in doubt, push a pawn. And Leia, you're saying d5.
yes,
A cluster of pawns, benefiting who? What do you think?
well, the problem is that the c3 pawn is stuck because the c pawns are doubled. So
Yes, yes, that's one of the
generally,
ideas of the Nimzo, of course. It's not just to win the pawn. Sometimes you do this. You may have seen this. There's a
so
Reshevsky game more like that, which is a good example of attacking those pawns. And he goes f5 to lock up after f4. Now this, oh, by the way, this is the Fischer, Spassky Fischer round 5, the championship 1972. But this one is more the rigidity. The two historic examples, the rigidity. You don't win them necessarily, but rigidity helps us. And what else?
I would think that also with doubled pawns, the ideal is to trade pawns in such a way so that the doubled pawn situation ends, and while at the same time worsening your opponent's pawns.
Therefore, now in this case, it doesn't really, it might worsen a bit for black, but in this case, the word that would inform among maybe two moves. Yeah, two moves that would be the worst for us. Involve and now you look at it from black's perspective about playing d5. Now white might want d5, they might want something else too. But let's say they go d5, you don't have to take. If they do go d5, now that would undouble the pawns, which is going to be much more comfortable for white. Also, the worst example is taking. Right, that's what you're talking about. Take. Suddenly, I mean, that's just awful because now white gets probably white wins. Let's see, what's the computer eval? As +1.5 almost. Yeah, 1.5. So yeah, plus 1.6, whatever, somewhere around there. So you undouble the pawns. White has great fluidity, can push any one of those pawns at will, basically. Maybe this time they could even prep it more. Castle, work behind. I mean, there's nothing the black can really do. It's very difficult. Maybe they'll try and lock it with a pawn at e5 or something, just to minimize it. But you got the bishop choosing a b2, a3. I kind of like b2, just tear open that diagonal, right? And you can see there's pretty much, it's going to be tough to find refuge for that king. Center can blast. King side, like I'm saying, those bishops will just eat across, just laser beams. And then queen side, you run into like c5, d5, maybe run the a pawn, rook's behind. Yeah, it's bad. So that would be really bad. Also, if we play d5, similarly, I mean, they'd be very happy with that. Like maybe what we take, could even push if they want, but at any rate, the position's going to be wide open, and it's got to favor the bishops, if anything. Computer suggests just, yeah, even e5 is good, like I said, but just take, let's say take, just castles. Let's say castles. That looks really terrible. Oh, wait, did he lose his? Oh, for some reason, it doesn't give what black, wait, what? Did black didn't move his king? Oh, maybe it's because it starts in the middle or something, and it wasn't indicated that black can castle. But anyway, if you do castle, it's probably not great because there's a big attack. So anyway, oh, and there's the answer. But as you guys were looking at, but by cross elimination, so we see that d5 is the thing. Now, actually, Leia, given that, so d5 is okay. It's kind of like a King's Indian where white plays d5. Although, as you allude to, the double pawns is not that big of a deal as long as you don't take and undouble them. You'd have to run your knight. It's annoying, yes, but not that big of a deal. Now, how about e5? As that suggests, just like we wanted to stop f5 in the previous game. So now, well, what am I getting at? Why do we want to play e5? Again, given what white wants, if we're not that worried about d5. Yeah, you'll see. We allow it, actually. Why do we play e5? So you see the answer, but why? You guys see it? What does white want? Flip it. So not d5. What does white want then? Actually, interestingly, I'll mention it. So take doesn't really do anything. it actually removes the trades off a d4 pawn for a d6 pawn, just punches a hole on d4 and d6. So what? Get rid of the d pawn. The c pawn fixes those two in place. So and also the thing I wrote about this this study is I said positional chess, knight versus bishop battle through pawn play. So it's also, like I said, it is holding back the pawns, which is in general very useful to understand. But in this case, it happens to be doing so with knights against bishops, which would favor the knights. Or if you don't do it, it really favors the bishops. So it has that added benefit of favoring the minor pieces by locking it for the knights. And of course, white, opposite scenario. So we know they want that break. So which break do you think white's going for, given the move that you see black does? Pause it for a moment. Okay, Matt, what are you looking at?
Well, E5.
That's the only other one.
Oh, white. Right.
It's not a4. I think he does play a4, but it's too slow. Can try. He's not really going anywhere, right? Can't move that one. Take. You just split up your pawns and fix it in place for good. Doesn't help the bishops. E5, yeah. D5, just move the knight, probably wrap around. So E5. So Fischer's looking out for E5. So he plays E5 himself, right? You just physically stop it. That time sometimes you physically stop them, directly blockade. Other times you try to indirectly. Like that was the idea of H5, right? You indirectly stop F5. I mean, you just don't want to play that. It's just bad. Oh, that's actually a line. Just gives you a sense. It's just good. Oh, the knight gets trapped. So it's artificial to come in. So we physically stop him. And there you go, there. He does play D5. Now we ensure that it's locked. It's going to castle. It's very interesting. Notice in both games, in a lot of comparisons we're seeing seeing a lot of these patterns, pattern recognition. They're recurring, right? So we're seeing, like I mentioned, I have arrow castling kingside. So it's more palatable to go kingside after locking it. And the other one, it's a little more directly in the center, right? What was it? I mean, sorry, this one's more directly on the king side. Little center too, but directly stopping any king side play, just once and for all, pretty much. Except for those lines later on that we saw, which don't benefit white. And then in this case, you can castle, but it's pretty hard to open things up for white. Look at that awful bishop on d3. Just nipped it in the butt. Because remember, at the beginning, okay, worst case scenario, we get the d5 line. The bishop's very happy. Look at those bishops. Even on c1, it's just chilling there and it's happy. You can also go to b2 or open things up, or a3 and maybe pin the pawn if the rook is on f8 or something after castling. Completely opposite scenario. We keep the pawns doubled. Yes, we give them a slight space advantage, but to what effect? To what end? I think Leia probably had to go. Yep, yeah, I did take off. Bye, Leia. Yeah, you see that? To what effect? It doesn't do anything. It helps us ensure that the position remains locked, right? So we're gonna come. I think I had the arrows. I'll keep it. So this is a quiz type study. You try and guess the moves. So anyway, yeah, you get to come into f4. Maybe you get all that dark square play. And notice that we have the bishop on light squares, so we push the pawns on dark squares. It's actually a common idea. It happens a lot. Like there are those lines where you go bishop b4 check, like I think a Queen's Indian situations or Bogo Indian, obviously Nimzo Indian. So this is one way to play it. As I said, there are other ways to play it, where you go straight after the c pawn, try to open that up and bear down on that, bear down on the c pawn. In this case, it's more about just locking it up. And then and again, you've taken on c3, you've doubled their pawns, helping create rigidity, which ensures it remains closed. Imagine white had a pawn on b2. They can smash with b4, right? They'd have a break, helps them open lines. Now that's not possible physically, right? And then we could play on the very common, knight e7, g6. Fischer just brilliantly carries it out. Oh, wait. Yeah, it's funny because I didn't realize it was the exact. I mean, I knew it was like same structure, but it's literally from that game. Because I said, if you look around 5, you'll see how Fischer won brilliantly in this kind of structure, exactly. And then there's a video that I put out there about it that I mentioned. I forgot about that. I put it there. Anyway, yeah, so it's a really instructive scenario from Fisher. Definitely recommend looking at the whole game. You guys have any questions about this one or these concepts?
So it's Fisher and who?
Fisher Spassky. Did I send you the link? No,
Probably. I don't know.
I sent you the other one. Again, I paused the video during that because we explored a bit more. But that one is, yeah, you have the heavy artillery. You can look it up also. And then Fisher Spassky. No one has been tougher on Russia than me. You probably recognize the quote that they took, may recognize the quote that they took that from. And so they're calling this the Nimzo-Indian Hubner variation. So we have a little Russia. We have a lot of countries in one, right? We got some Russia/Soviet Union. We've got US. We've got Reykjavik. We've got Hubner from Germany. So a lot of seeing the international influences on chess. So I'm going to send you guys the link to that one. And you guys have any more thoughts on that? No?
No, good stuff.
You got to lock it up. Yeah. If you have the knights in particular, but you lock it up if you need to, because you see they have a pawn thrust, but you obviously have to know that they have the pawn thrust in the first place, which is why we look at takes, push, and push. So of course, if you have white, you see that. Now Spassky was going straight for it. Actually, Spassky ends up moving his knight, playing f4 just to really try to get an e5, but Fischer does not give in to that. Does not cede. Okay, real quick. Since I have it here, we have to look at it briefly before we finish. May as well, right? So this is the position, right? Here's how it came about. So you have Nimzo. It's Nimzo-Indian. You can look up. Knight f3. The other game was e3 first, I think. c5. No, never mind. That was the game I looked at before. Okay, knight c6, bishop d3, take. So he voluntarily takes before he like defends the knight and takes back with another piece. He wants to double him. He's already committing to this structure. Locks it up. There's your knight e7, knight h4, like I said. He wants to play f4. So he brilliantly stops this idea. h6. So this notion of taking and forking him, it actually didn't work in practice. He doesn't do it yet. It's kind of intimidation factor. You also might play g5. It's kind of, and by the way, speaking of where you put your king, you might go queenside. a4, a5. You can go a5, b6. Okay, b6 pawn, but he got enough protection. That's all he has going for him. So anytime you can make it so that you really shut down that side of the board almost completely, at least by pawn play, you can feel comfortable castling there. We saw that a lot. So knight g6, take. It's like, okay, well, I've pulled your pawns away from the center. Isolated the e pawn behind a pawn, but it is isolated. This could be guarded with b6, as happens. But he's like, okay, I'm splintering your pawns. Doesn't matter though. Locks it up, defends everything. He actually uses this to his advantage. There you go. He didn't castle here, but he locked it up. Look at that a pawn ominously. See, that matters later. Foreshadowing. See, now this is nice. Queen e8 to g6. So making use of those doubled pawns. One attacks, one defends. Goes in between, nice little pocket. Looks at the e pawn. Maybe don't take yet because the pin. You get pinned, but he comes up, defends. Swing, he trades it off. And again, there you go. Superior knight really coming to fruition. Awful d1 bishop, just a miserable piece, right? He's really hoping to take and hold the position. Does not give that to him. Tempo, of course he doesn't. He's been working toward that. Keep an eye on that. Game over. Worth studying. Sacks the bishop, resigns. Because the queen will come in. Game. And by the way, if he doesn't take, you'll take the bishop and take a second pawn. So that's lost. Forking the bishop and mate. And he's lost. So, and he's losing 2 pawns. But he has like a weird line where he can come out and he like loses the bishop and probably gets mated soon. But yeah, great game. So I think I send you guys that one as well in the chat. No, I'll send you that too. So again, just some scenarios from real games that you can use for yourself. Cool. All right, I'm gonna pause the recording. Nice job, guys. Hopefully you gained something from those positions / games. See a lot of parallels.